Hello, I'm Ian Alexander Hansen, also known as Animated Critic, also known as Impasto Animation Studios. Welcome to my training video. Today I will be covering the topic of character rigging for After Effects, Part 2, Import to After Effects and Rig. Thank you for watching this video. Please watch, enjoy, learn, and comment. I would love to hear from you. Welcome to Character Rigging Part 2, where we take the model that we created in Illustrator and import it into After Effects and prepare it for animation. Now, something that we could do in After Effects, but maybe a little bit easier in Illustrator, is to really check our layer orders. Make sure that everything's really in the place where it ought to be. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to take all my hand pieces, I'm going to put them with the parts of the body that are hands. Left hand behind left forearm, right hand behind right forearm. We're also going to check, the question is, do the hands need to come back behind the body or in front of the body? In this case, I think they're probably going to most often come back in front of the body. So I want to make sure that when these pieces of the body move, that they're coming in front of the body. Except for the bicep. The bicep, I think, if I put the bicep in front of the body, in front of the chest, that looks a little bit weird. So in this case, the biceps can stay behind, and as long as they don't swing too far, should be okay. So I like all the leg pieces to be beneath in the bottom. The shoes even underneath the legs, so maybe left shoe under left calf. Right shoe under right calf. I've got hip here at the very bottom, which is a good place for it because I can always find it easily. And in this case, since I'm not seeing the hip directly, that's fine. That phone, I want to go ahead and put it behind the left hand. It's actually a little bit strange placement because the hand's not really positioned correctly. We could put it in between. And behind the thumb, but in front of the other parts. That might work as well. For now, the phone's just kind of off to the separate place, but at least we know it's in the right layer. So just making sure that we've got that in a good order is really going to help us when we go into After Effects. The other thing I did really quickly, I just made a room where she can go and a table that she stands behind the table but in front of the chairs. So that's how that'll work. Let's go to After Effects. Now in After Effects, there are a couple different kinds of imports. I use Command I, or you could do File Import. I've got that Lennon room. Lennon's the name of the character. In this case, we're bringing it in as footage. It's really important to understand footage versus composition. So we've got the room footage and the table. Again, is footage. Command N is a new composition. This will be the room that she's in, 1920 by 1080. Most animations no longer than, maybe 400 or 500 frames. We're going to call this one room. And that's it. So we've got the room and the room with the table. There we go. That's where she'll go. Now let's deal with the character. Import, Command I, and this piece, I want to make sure I saved it, which I think I did. I did, Command S, and bring it in. This time, composition, and the footage dimensions, each layer is going to be the size of its own layer, not the size of the document. It's going to make it a lot easier to work with. And we've got her in. We double click it, and there she is. standing proud. Now, one of the things I like to do, this composition size is the size of my actual artboard. I want that to be bigger because she might have to swing left or right or even walk across a room. Let's say she's going to walk maybe 3 times as big. And her height, again, maybe she has to reach her arms above her head or bend down or jump or whatever. So there's all kinds of things that could happen. So I just want to give her enough room to breathe. And that gives her that. Okay. Now again, if she were going to walk across the room, I might even want to take this and bring her over to one side, for instance. Now we get the 4 P's. We get position, pivot points, puppet pins, and parrots. Now position refers to both the stacking order, which I think I've done a decent job of taking care of in Illustrator. It also refers to position on the screen. So we're going to position things where they need to be. I noticed when I was trying this earlier that this kind of overlaps. The forearm is kind of overlapping a little bit more than I want it to. So I can just position things where I want them to be. But then that layer stacking order is just super important. So if the forearm does swing in front of the body, it's going to actually come in front of the body. Make sure, of course, the hair is in front of the head, but the hair that's behind the head, the hair back, remains behind the head as well as behind the body. In fact, this is going to be the lowest, or one of the lowest levels there is that behind the hair. More than likely, the legs aren't going to swing up in front of that hair that's back there, but in case they do, it's important to know where it is. So we've got the position in place. Okay, the second thing we're going to look for is the pivot points. Okay, now the pivot points we can control with this little thing here, or press the letter Y, the pan behind the anchor point tool. So getting things to pivot where they ought is, of course, super important. The feet, letter Y, the feet are going to pivot here. Anytime you want to test it out, just press W and see if it's working like you want. And go back to letter Y. These would, of course, pivot right at the knees, the calves. It's actually not important that they do, and I'll show you why in a sec, at least not the way that I'm going to rig. Okay, these are going to pivot, around the hip area, of course. Now the hip itself is hard to grab because it's behind there, but it's got a pivot point right around here. And that'll become important in a little while. So then, of course, each piece, the belly, pivoting right at its base, the mid-thoracic, and of course the chest, pivoting right about where it needs to be. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Now the neck's another piece that's a little bit hard to grab. Looks like its pivot point is about where I want it already. And pivot right from there. Could be a little bit lower perhaps. Of course, the biceps. And then the hands. Because I've constructed these hands as 4 different pieces, you have to deal with them as 4 different pieces. Each pivot point being where it ought. Seems about right. This takes some time. Not pleasant, but you're going to thank yourself for it once you've got all these in the right places. Finger mid, and finger tip, should we ever see those, depending on whether she's holding the phone or not. Even the phone doesn't really pivot by its center. It's going to pivot more by, depending on where you're holding it. We've got two heads, and that's a little bit tricky. So we've got the happy head and the frightened head. So the happy face, okay. Now the happy face is going to pivot clearly somewhere around the neck area. I will not need to do the frightened face. Now I could, of course, it would also pivot by the neck area. But you'll see why in a second. Frightened eyes, all those, don't worry about those right now. If we did pivot the eyes, which I will in animation, I'm going to usually pivot them somewhere around here. So the left eye, the right eye. Now something really important that I do want to demonstrate right now while I'm here is how does this blinking work? And I was talking about the blinking in the other lesson. So we've got our right eyelid and we've got our left eyelid. We also have these left eyelid and right eyelid covers. Okay, again, they kind of look like sunglasses. They're not. They're not actually going to be seen. We're going to make sure that the right eyelid is right underneath the right eyelid cover. And what's going to happen is that as the right eyelid cover lowers, that's when it shows the right eyelid. So if you don't have three selections here, you have to click toggle switches and modes. And then there's this thing called a track map. And so that right eyelid is going to be alpha'd under the cover, meaning that the cover is not shown. You could show it, but After Effects will automatically turn it off. And as that cover lowers and raises, that's when the right eyelid is shown. So we can do really nice blinks this way. It's the same thing here. We want the left eyelid to be controlled by that cover, the left eyelid cover. And as that cover is raised and lowered, the left eyelid is revealed and taken away. So we could even do, if we wanted to, you know, like she's sleepy today. She's got her lids half open. Things like that. So it's really important that you can control those eyelids and have good control over the eyelids. So that's that. So we've got the head, the hair, and then you would have to do that for each face. So the frightened face, I would have to set up the same thing. This is why we don't do a whole lot of details, because the more details we do, the longer it takes. But especially in the eyes, the payoff is big. So if you get just a few details like separate eyebrows and like eyelids that can close, you get a lot of bang for your buck doing that. The hair on the back is going to pivot by about there. So we've got just about everything that we need pivoted. And that's going to take care of that. That's our pivot points. Now when we talk about puppet pins, we're going to use them here. Now the reason for this is that we want those calves and those feet to stay planted when the rest of the body moves. So in order to do puppet pins, we have to go through a couple steps. We have to give ourselves some new nulls. Now, if you have not used nulls before, they're just invisible objects that can control other things. Basically, they have their own animation, and sometimes you don't want them shown, and you might have a flock of birds, or in this case, you might have a leg. And so we're going to need nulls. We'll need them at the knees and at the ankles. So, knee left. Command D is to duplicate, and knee right. Knee right's going to go over there, wherever it should end up. Command D, need a couple of ankles. We will bring these down. Ankle left and ankle right. Now just to see where everything kind of goes, sometimes I will even color these. So I use the effects, the color correction, and the color balance. And I'll go ahead and color these legs just a little bit, just so I kind of see where everything goes. Copy that, Command C, Command V, so we've got color on both of these. And maybe even I want to see my calves on top of the thighs instead of beneath the thighs. Now there's a reason this one's a little bit higher than that one, but I'm not super worried about it right now. However, I'm going to adjust that null just a little bit, just so I kind of have an idea about where the knees are going to be. It's okay if they're not exactly perfect, but okay. That will then tell me where to put the puppet pins. Now, a lot of people will bring in a model that's just a picture, and it doesn't have any separations the way I'm doing now, and it's just completely controlled by puppet pins, which is a valid way to animate as well. I don't usually like to do that for a variety of reasons. The puppet pins can get really complicated, but I find them very useful for certain things, especially like this, for character rigs like this. So Command P, or you can click it up here, your puppet pin tool, and it's going to allow you to put those puppet pins. So V, I select the joint, Command P, and then I'm going to put those pins, I'm going to try to line them up with where I put the nulls. Same thing here, V to select that joint, and then Command P is the puppet pin tool. And I'm set. Now inside here, it gives you mesh, deform, and you can actually name each of your puppet pins. So ankle and knee. It's not crucial, but it's probably best practice to go ahead and name them. Again, there's my ankle, and here's my knee. So those are my puppet pins. Now I'm ready to parent. But before I do that, I'll just go ahead and take these color balances off. Back to normal. Puppet pins, and we're ready to parent. Now by parenting, I mean that one thing controls another. So you've got the parent, you've got the child. I've got those parent options right here. I don't like to see all these pull downs, so I'll usually switch back, but not important. However you want to do it is good there. So we're going to start with, again, the hip being the controller of all the action. Therefore, the hip doesn't have a parent. Okay, it's the parent of other things, and it is not the parent. It doesn't have a parent itself. It's not a child. But a lot of things are connected to the hip. Of course, the left and the right thigh are connected to the hip. The belly is connected to the hip. And so what that means is that as you grab the hip, and as the hip starts moving around, it's moving other things with it. Whereas the hip starts to rotate, it's going to rotate other things with it. So it's going to really control a whole lot of that action. Okay. And then we just kind of go through one by one, and we start parenting things to each other. The ankle right is going to be connected to the shoe right. Ankle left is going to be connected to the shoe left. The knee right is going to be connected to the thigh right. And the knee left is going to be connected to the thigh left. These layers are from before. I don't need those. So the right forearm, of course, you can do this, you could figure this out and do this all day. Right forearm is going to be connected to the right bicep. Right palm is going to be connected to the right forearm. And then right finger mid is going to be connected to right palm. Right fingertip is going to be connected to right finger mid. Right thumb, again, being connected to right palm. Left forearm connected to left bicep. Left thumb connected to left palm. Phone, I'm going to connect it to left palm as well. Left finger palm connected to left forearm. Left finger mid connected to left palm. Left fingertip connected to left finger mid. Mid-thoracic connected to belly. Chest connected to mid-thoracic. Neck connected to chest. Now, really important here, the hair is going to be connected to the head. The right bicep, left bicep, and right bicep are going to be connected to chest. Hair is going to be connected to head, which is going to be happy face. Now this is actually really important. I'm going to make happy face the controller of the frightened face. Reason is that as I animate, and I might change faces during a single animation, but I only want to have to control one head. I don't have to worry about where the happy face animation is or the frightened face animation is. So I actually want the happy face to control it all, even if it's not showing for those frames. It still is going to be the leader of the animation. So I've actually made the frightened face connected to the happy face. Now all these things on the happy face are going to be connected to the happy face. And all these things on the frightened face are going to be connected to the frightened face. Okay, we've got just about everything. There are a couple things that don't get connected. The right shoe and the left shoe do not get connected. The right thigh or the right calf and the left calf also do not get connected. Now the reason for that is that the shoe is going to control action on both feet, the left and right shoes. And the calf is going to be controlled by the puppet pins that we created. So let's go ahead and get those puppet pins connected. Now I sought for a long time and had to figure this out, and I finally found a website that gave me a code that works. What this is going to do, it's going to copy that code. What this is going to do is it's actually going to connect the puppet pin to the null. So the null, like the null knee, is right now connected by that. You'll see that the null moves at the same time the leg does. Now we're going to make the puppet pin actually move at the same time as that. So this is my right calf. You click open up position and you click option. I'm going to escape that for a second. I like to do this inside the graph editor with my expression editor showing, because I find it's easier just to kind of expand this out. So graph editor, shift F3, or you can click the button expression editor showing, and then I will click option and command A and command V. Now this is right calf. It's going to be connected to the null called knee right. The rest of the code I just leave, it's good. Meaning that if the right thigh now rotates, it will bring that with it. Right ankle, the same way. Option, there's my expression. Command V for paste, and this is going to go to ankle right. Meaning that if the shoe moves, it moves that with it. Same thing here for left calf. Those two pieces, ankle and knee, you have to go into the position code for them. Option, this is knee, and so it's going to be knee left. And as long as you've properly named your nulls, it's not going to have a problem. If you do something weird, like even it's case sensitive, so knee left with a lower L, it'll say, oh, it can't do that. It disabled your expression. You have to go back and just kind of make sure everything's working there. So that's that. And then ankle the same way. Command A, Command V, ankle, left. And that deals with all the parenting. Everything should be connected properly to each other. You're likely to make a mistake, I always do, and then I have to go back and reparent and figure out where I made a mistake. But that's the idea. That's parenting. That's putting one thing and making it the child of another, as it should be controlled by the other. So, before I'm done, I want to test this model out. So again, we start with the hip, and we just kind of see, is everything kind of working? That was almost a good sign, except I forgot the back of the hair. Good, perfect opportunity to make sure. That's going to go to the happy face. Again, hip. It moves, and things are moving the way I want them to. Notice that the feet don't move across the floor. This is because people stand with their feet planted. It's a real pain. This is what we call inverse kinematics, where the feet actually control the other parts of the body, which is good. And then rotating, and we've got rotations correct. We just go up and down and make sure that everything kind of is working the way that we're expecting it to. This is not animating, obviously. I'm not trying to get an animation out of this. We're just trying to make sure that things are going the way that they ought. I'm not crazy with that pivot point, so I can move the pivot point. Make sure happy face. And I don't do necessarily a whole lot of hair animation. I see that that hair is actually behind the chest, which I don't like. So this is the kinds of things that I'll adjust while I am. Hair animation takes some time. So I don't necessarily do a lot of it, but a lot of times I'll kind of have the hair just kind of follow the body just a little bit. So I do like to have things that can rotate if I want them to. And then the hair back. And that's not back far enough. It should at least be behind the neck. So there we go. So we might do a little bit of animation on those parts. Biceps. Thumb. Fingers. Everything seems to be working properly. And we're good. She looks a little bit strange. I'm going to go back and do Command Z, which means that the things that I changed while I was testing, the neck, pivot point, the hair coming in front, the hair going in back, I'm going to have to go back and redo those because I'm going backwards right now. And all of those are going to be undone. And of course I'm going to want them to be redone. Okay, we're back in business. So at this point, the hair, wanted it to go in front of the chest. This hair, we wanted it to go back behind the neck. And the neck, we wanted to change its pivot point just slightly. One thing that I have discovered, I used to be really nervous about changing things midstream, but After Effects seems to be really good about keeping up with things. So even if you're like halfway through animating and you say, boy, that pivot point's in the wrong place, or that thing's on the wrong layer, or even it wasn't parented to the right thing, it seems like After Effects is really, really good about keeping up with changes. So then as my last step, once I'd done some animation here, I would take that animated character. I would actually duplicate, Command D, and I would animate this one. So let's say Lennon answers phone. And then I make that animation, and I would actually take this and drag it right into my room. She's a giant, as we've discussed before, which is fine. Just take her scaler down to proper size. She is in front of room and behind table. And whatever animation I did is going to translate directly over into this room, and we will be good to go. And that's it. So thank you again for watching this video, and we'll see you next time. Thank you again for watching this video. If you have any other comments, things that are missing, or videos you'd like to see in the future, please do leave them. Thank you again.